Hey guys, and welcome to another video. Now this video is going to serve some different functions. So this is sort of going to be a bit of an endgame gear guide, like what kind of items there are endgame. It's going to be like a degradable guide on degradables, and I'm going to try and pick up contrast between degradables and non-degradables and what you should be using and when you should be using it. Now I'm only going to go over a small selection of the degradable items, but I will put on the screen in text a list of all the decent degradables at high level. There are some that might be left on the list for different reasons. I'm mostly going to sort of do this in the sense of how much they cost to repair and how much they cost to obtain, etc. So because of that, I will not be featuring any PvP armor, because this is basically like they degrade after 30 minutes, an hour, etc. They're ridiculously expensive. Don't ever use them unless you're PvPing. I will not be featuring obsidian armor because you recharge those through a minigame and not through money. I will not be featuring dungeoneering exclusive items. Now, what I mean by this is the items you use inside the dungeon. I will be featuring the items that you get from rewards from dungeons. Same with the hybrid level 85 set from mini games. I'm not featuring that either. Now, a few things are mentioned before I get into some of the items. So for items, I'm going to be looking at mostly how durable they are, how much money they cost to get, how much money they cost to maintain. I won't be going too much into numbers of how much better they are, but generally speaking, the higher level the items, the better they are. So that being said, there are a couple things I should mention before going into them. Now, there are some items, such as the highest tier of armor, which will degrade and then turn to dust. It will disappear. Like, you can't repair it. Now, if you were to use dyes, such as Third Age dye or Barrows dyes, Barrows dye are the cheapest at 300 mil, then you can still repair items that would normally go to dust. They'll just be broken at 0 charges and you can still repair them, whereas otherwise they would just be like completely broken. Also, because this video is out after invention, I need to mention about augmented items. Now, if you augment items using invention, they will not degrade in the normal way. They will have a charge pool. Like, all your augmented items share one pool for charges, instead of normal degrades. And the charge pool can be improved, and it's time based. Some items degrade based on number of hits, etc. This is basically time based if you use the augmentations. If you run out of charges, the perks will be lost and any invention buffs will be lost, but I believe the item will not be broken or anything. Like, you won't lose it. It won't be worse than a normal item if you had it at full charges. So with that being said, I'm going to get into armor first before I go into melee. And for each of these, like, I'm only going to mention some of the more significant ones, and I'm going to give my thoughts on whether I think these are worth it. So starting off, we have the level 90 power armor. There's one for melee, ranged, and and magic. You've got Malevolent for melee, Tectonic for magic, and Serenic for ranged. Now, these cost around 16 mil. The Serenic costs 28 mil for the whole set. So for top level armor, that's actually not too bad if you really think about it. I mean, you think they might be going for like a few hundred mil. Now they can survive 100,000 hits, which is it's around 15 hours, I believe, in combat. But yeah, it's based on hits, these ones. Now, why are they so cheap for being what they are? Well, it's because once they run out of charges, they turn to dust. You can't repair them. If you've got multiple items which are low repair left of these, you can put them together to increase that. But at the end of the day, they are going to disappear at some point. So you'll traditionally use these for bossing, like really high-end bossing, where you're making back more than this amount. And yeah, these are really good for bosses. Like, the stats on them are so much better than some of the others, but they are so expensive. Like, you don't use these doing Slayer. You don't use these doing Goblins dungeon bosses. You use this for Araxi, Virago, maybe King Calfight, but not that much more than that. So I'm also going to mention player-owned sports armor, which are the Tetsu for melee, the ranged have Death Lotus, and Sea Singer for magic. Now, these are level 85 tank gear. Now, what's the difference between power armor and tank armor? Power armor have offensive stats, but less defensive stats. And tank armor is the other way around. Like, a lot of armor in the game is tank armor, whereas like there's only a few sets of power armor, and they're all high level. So, player-owned ports armor, you don't buy them in the traditional way. You want to have superior ones, but you can buy the normal ones. The normal ones will vanish when degraded. They cost 8 mil to buy. They last 10 hours in combat. The superior one lasts 12 hours. They don't vanish. So to repair them, it's 2.1 million for the entire set to repair at 99 smithing. So smithing impacts player and house repairing. If you've got a legendary pet, don't go to Bob's Axes to fix things when you have decent smithing. It's not worth it. You'll get ripped off by him because he's just like that. So you need 92 smithing to craft the superior set anyway. So you're gonna have that. You're gonna have it quite low. Probably not down to 2.1 mil unless you've got 99 smithing, but it's still good. Next I'm going to move on to Nex armor, which is level 80 power armor, and it drops from Nex. It's the extra Godswords dungeon wing. And now these are Torva for melee, for mage it's Virtis, and for ranged it's Pernix. And all these armors last 60 charges, which is about 5 hours in combat. So the price varies depending on discipline. I think it's the Pernix is like 37 mil. Virtis I believe is 50 mil, and Torva is 77 mil. So this is power armor. This is actually far inferior to player-owned ports and Malevolent, but this is the most accessible sort of cheapest one. So it's 3.8 million to base repair for the entire set, but this is reduced substantially by smithing. 99 smithing is 1.9 mil for the entire set for 5 hours. Now this 5 hours is like, it's 5 hours of continuous combat. Yeah, it's going to last you probably like a week or so, in actual fact. Now, I would not use player owned ports armor or next armor for any slayer, but I'd use them for bosses. Now, player owned ports armor, you want, because it's tanky, you want to use it where your damage doesn't matter, which there's very few bosses where the damage isn't the main thing. Next armor is sort of what you're probably going to be using on most bosses, because the top level stuff is just so expensive, it's too expensive. But next really is sort of, it's the budget armor for doing any kind of bossing. So yeah, I would recommend next for any kind of bossing, from Godswords dungeon upwards. But I wouldn't recommend player imports armor for most bosses. Again, you have to look at the bosses themselves on whether they need to be bursted down or not. I'm going to quickly mention Ganodermic Mage armor, which is 75 tank armor. Now, this don't buy this. This is not, like, this is never ever good money. Now, it costs about 4 million to buy, and it costs exactly the same to repair, because instead of being degraded, it actually vanishes into like its base component, which is worth nothing. And so you need Ganodermic flakes to increase these charges. And the Ganodermic flake prices are very volatile. They change so much. So because of that, I would not recommend doing this. At the moment they're 4 mil. So yeah, it lasts for 5 hours. Now, what if you don't want to use degradable armor? So any Slayer task and some of the lower level bosses, you want to be using non-degradable, because you don't want to be spending money on these when in actual fact the God armor, which is the level 70 power armor for Godswords Dungeon, is just really strong. So it can be quite pricey at level 70. You've got Bandos for melee, Subjugation for Mage, which is actually Zaryte armor, and Armadyl, which is ranged armor. Now, these pieces do count towards like God stuff in Godswords Dungeons, just so you know. Now, at the moment, they vary from 8.6 to 12 million per set. And yeah, this is a lot. This is very expensive. But you will never have to repair or replace them. They are the best in slot non-degradable armor in the entire game. So this is why they're so expensive. Now, if you're ranged, there is an alternative. I believe only ranged gets level 65 armor. If you're ranged, you might want to take level 65 tank armor, which is Royal Dragonhide. It's non-degradable and it's 42k for the entire set. Easy, cheap. So yeah, that's if you're on a budget. Now we are moving on to melee. Melee weapons. Now, okay, I'm not going to cover all of them here, because a lot of them are just really self-explanatory. So I'm going to mention the ones I think are worth and definitely not worth. So first of all, Drygores. Everyone knows what Drygores are. Given that they're best in slot items for melee, they are dirt cheap. Like, so cheap for being best in slot. You'd expect best in slot to be like, you know, hundreds of mil. A pair of Drygores at the moment goes for anywhere between 37 to 50 mil for a pair. They last 5 hours in combat, and they are 4.5 million to repair. However, this is influenced by smithing, so at level 99 it's roughly half that, 2.25 mil to repair. Now, this is the upfront cost is really cheap. The repair cost, I mean, the repair cost sounds like a lot, but when you think, okay, you could be in combat for like 2 hours, and if you've got decent well, actually just 1 hour if you've got decent smithing, and you'll be making that straight back. But is it worth dropping that amount of money over some of the non-degradables? I would say absolutely yes for some of the higher Slayer tasks. Definitely for bosses. Absolutely, definitely for bosses. The higher Slayer tasks are a good one to use them on as well, because they speed up kills, netting you more XP per hour and more money per hour off the enemies. So I would say Drygores are sort of your... get them when you can. They are your go-to high-end weapon. They don't disappear into dust, so you can obviously repair them. And honestly, there's no downside to Drygores. So yeah. Now, Noxious Scythe, I will mention. Now, this is around the price that top-end items sort of should be. It costs 167 mil. 5 hours of charges, 4.5 mil to repair. Now, I will say this again, that's like the repair cost is basically the same as Drygores, so use it when like you would normally use Drygores. But I mean, Drygores are about a quarter of the price, upfront price. If you're getting the Noxious Scythe, you're doing it for big bosses. So don't buy the Noxious Scythe for Slayer. Buy Drygores for Slayer. So looking further down my list, so I'm going to mention Chaotix because that's what people tend to go for. And I forgot about the price of Ripper Claws on here, but Ripper Claws are actually I'll mention quickly Ripper Claws. They're decent, but they're very expensive up front. I will have details on the screen. But now for Chaotix. Now what I say here will be repeated in the range and mage section quite a lot. So Chaotix are level 80, you need 80 dungeoneering and a decent amount of dungeoneering tokens. Now these are sort of generally the first degradable items you'll get. I mean, aside from maybe barrows, which I don't recommend getting barrows because God Armour is so much stronger. Well, it's so much better and it's basically free upkeep. So Chaotix. Now with melee is something different to mage and range, whereas melee have two-hander and one-handers. Now it's to repair a two-hander, it's 2 million, and this is not influenced by your smithing, so bear that in mind. It's always going to be 2 million unless you use dungeoneering tokens to reduce it. And they last 5 hours. The one-handers have the same the same duration, but the main hand is 2 million to repair, and the offhand is 1 million to repair. So if you're dual wielding, it's 1 million more per repair. So bear that in mind. Now, Chaotix, you would generally use these for Slayer. I wouldn't recommend for all Slayer tasks, but yeah, you'll be using this for Slayer if you can't have Drygores. If you have Drygores, it's definitely worth using Drygores on the bigger stuff. I mean, Chaotix are cheaper to repair than Drygores, I guess. Unless you're dual wielding, in which case it can actually be more expensive to repair Chaotix, which is alarming. So, the non-degradable items. You've got so many choices here. So, there is no shortage to level 75 weapons. Now, the problem is that they're all two-handers. Like, you can't dual wield at level 75 with melee unless you've got enhanced Excalibur, but the best one-handed weapon is the Vine Abyssal Whip, but there is no good offhand, so only use that if you're using a shield. So we've got Wars. The God Wars two-handers. So you've got 4 kinds. You've got Armadyl, Saradomin, Zaryte, and Bandos. The Saradomin one is 10 mil. That's the only kind of standout one. You've also got the Zaryte spear, and you've got the Saradomin sword. Not to be confused with Godsword. Saradomin sword is a two-hander with quicker attacks, and they range from 400k to 1.6 mil. Now I will cover mage weapons. So at the top you've got the Noxious Staff, which is very similar to the Noxious Scythe. 5 hours in combat, 150 mil, and 4.5 mil repair. So this is influenced by smithing. I would recommend this for bosses only. In fact, most of the mage weapons I would only recommend for bossing. So the thing with mage is the staffs seem to impact your accuracy more than your actual damage, and honestly a chaotic staff nearly always hits if you're using prayer, so there's almost no reason to kind of go higher than the chaotic staff, if that makes sense. So I will also mention Seismics because the price tag, 560 million for Seismics. These are the equivalent to Drygores. It's the Seismic Wand and the Seismic Singularity. Singularity can be changed into a Calfire item, which is basically a shield and an orb in one. So that's quite cool. It's like a magic defender. Yeah, never use Seismics. There's no reason to shell out that amount. It's crazy to shell out that amount of money. But yeah, it's 4.5 mil repair, which is the same as Noxious Staff. It won't kill you things that much quicker than any of the other lower weapons, particularly some of the non-degradables. But that lasts for 5 hours. I'm not going to talk about the Staff of Darkness because I felt that's sort of, I can explain on screen better. So, Camel Staff. Now, Camel Staff is a level 85 staff, which has a potential of dropping in price because the mob is still actually really relatively new. So, a Camel Staff is a fire elemental staff, first of all, so you get 3 fire runes for it. It costs 100 mil in the GE. It lasts 5 hours in combat, and it's 4.1 mil to repair. Now, obviously this is impacted by smithing as well, so you can get that down to 2 mil with 99 smithing. Like, you may be noticing that if you want to use degradables, having decent smithing is really an absolute must. So I would actually pretty heavily recommend a camel staff as being your top high-end weapon. And the reason for this is because the accuracy doesn't make too much of a difference at that higher level, because, well, it's not influence your damage. You're hardly missing anyway. But the camel staff gives you 3 fire runes, and at the moment of making this video, fire runes are 200 GP each. I have no idea why. I think invention's got something to do with it. The entire market's screwed because of invention anyway. But yeah, I would recommend this because if you were to use ancient magics and blood spells to heal yourself on bosses, you would only need blood runes to cast blood spells. Well, the top blood spells. And this is much more. This is much cheaper than using any other form for maging here. So, whereas you do have to repair it, it saves you quite a bit in fire runes over the long run. I will mention the Virtis Wand and Book, which are dropped off next. Now these are 14 mil for the set, 5 hours. And they are 3 million repair for smithing. Now, if you if you've got a better smithing, it's like goes down to 1.5 mil. This is actually really cheap repair. Like, this is an extremely cheap repair for what they are, really. So if you let's say if you went and got chaotic weapons for another discipline, didn't get the chaotic staff, the Virtis Wand and Book are sort of your alternative for level 80 weaponry, but still I don't think they're that much better than the Armadyl Battlestaff. So chaotic staff, simple as 2 mil to repair, 5 hours. This should sort of be your go-to item for bossing, like particularly mid to low level bossing. I don't know, I mean, maybe that one mist that you might actually have whilst you're stacking up your prayer might end up being the critical one, I don't know. I mean, in that case you might want to go over camel staff. But chaotic staff you can't go wrong with. That should sort of be your go-to. However, if you don't want to pay repairs, have a try at this one. It's the Armadyl Battlestaff. Now, this is an extremely expensive weapon for this kind of level. It costs 11 mil. Now, this is a air elemental staff, which provides 3 air runes, so it's amazing against anything with a weakness to air. You just spam air spells for days. It's non-degradable. It's level 77. This is best in slot for magic without any degradables, and honestly I would recommend the Armadyl staff at all times, except for maybe that really top tier of bossing. You can't fault it. There is nothing bad about it. It even gives you protection in the Armadyl section as a mage, which is crazy. If you don't want to spend that much, you could have a look at the Staff of Light. or the Abyssal Wand and Orb, which are level 75, and they're around a mil, 1.5 mil each, so take those into consideration. Now, before I go into the ranged weapons, it's important to mention that obviously the repair cost, like the number of degradables you have, the repair cost is going to go up. So be aware of this. I mean, the amount to repair Drygores might not sound too much, but if you've got a lot of armor with you, then suddenly it's quite a lot to repair everything. So bear that in mind. Having said that, there is my favourite weapon in the game in this range section, and it's like literally the cheapest degradable ever. Okay, so first of all, I will mention level 90. I'm not going to mention the Noxious Bow because I've covered the Noxious items already. Ascension Crossbows, these are the ones you know about the most. 5 hours combat, 4 mil to repair, and smithing is taken into account for this as well, and it's 150 mil for the pair. These are your go-to bossing items. Absolutely use Ascension Crossbows for bossing. These are your high-end stuff. And I mean, some of the higher Slayer stuff you might want to use as well, because man, the difference between some of these weapons is huge. Mage not so much, but melee and ranged, the difference is big, particularly ranged, as I found. There's also the level 85 Wyvern Crossbow, which is, again, it's a newish item. It could go down in price. 58 mil at the moment, 5 hours in combat, and it's 4.1 mil to repair, so slightly more than Ascension Crossbows. But the longer you're in damage with this item, the more damage the longer you're in combat, the more damage it does. So this might be ideal for longer bosses, like even more than the Ascension Crossbows or Noxious Bow. So bear that in mind. Now I'm not gonna mention the Strykebow. What I will mention though is level 80 weapons, because there is a massive contrast here. So you've got the level 80 Zaryte Bow. Now obviously if something needs arrows, and it's so much importance that you need arrows, the Zaryte Bow is sort of your go-to, because it's 30 mil, lasts 10 hours in combat, and it's 2 mil to repair, and smithing is then taken into account on top of that. That's actually really cheap. You can get this down to, with 99 smithing, down to 1 mil for 10 hours, and that's crazy. Like, that sounds too good to be true. No, it's really, really good value. But why does no one ever use the Zaryte Bow, I wonder? So I'm going to mention chaotic crossbows before I mention the royal crossbow. So the chaotic crossbows are like all other chaotic weapons. They 5 hours in combat, but because they're 2 weapons, it's 3 million to repair. So that's quite expensive. And obviously you can't reduce this with smithing either. So I would not recommend these over the Zaryte Bow. But really, if you're looking for a level 80 weapon, forget about those. You want the royal crossbow, because the royal crossbow is a level 80 crossbow. It's two-handed. Its components cost 500k. 500k for one of the best crossbows in the game. Now, you do have to do a quest for this, and to be able to get it completed, because you can't just trade up the crossbow, you have to be able to survive until phase 4 in Queen Black Dragon. So that's the difficulty in getting it. but it's basically you assemble 4 of the components from QBD into this crossbow, and then just get it enchanted by the QBD. Now, this lasts 5 hours in combat, and I'll tell you what, it's my main weapon. I'm using it now in the video, and it seems to last a lot longer. Now, the crazy thing is, okay, so to people who absolutely hate degradables, this, I recommend, this is the one degradable you want to get. Forget about cost, this is the one you want to get, because to repair 25% of it, at the moment it's 108k, because you just have to combine a piece of the crossbow to give it 25% more charges. Full repair is like 4 of these if it hits 0. But I mean, considering you can do so much more damage with this than you can do with Armadyl crossbows, this is so much better than the non-degradables. And I mean, the Armadyl crossbows, which I'll get into next, cost 12.5 mil compared to this 500k. You could repair the Royal Crossbow fully 24 times, and then it will still be the same price as getting the Armadyl crossbows, and it will speed up your kills a lot quicker. I recommend using the Royal Crossbow for everything, even for training. Like, if you're not even doing Slayer, even for training, use the Royal Crossbow. It's dirt cheap. You've got nothing to lose. I mean, you're going to be making that money back up so easily. So yeah, don't diss degradable items, because the Royal Crossbow is one you do absolutely want to get. Those of you that are in my clan, I'm talking to you guys. Get it. I thought the same. I thought degradables were crap. Get the Royal Crossbow. It is so much value for money. And it really doesn't feel like a degradable at all, except that you have to make sure it doesn't hit 0 sometimes. So other ranged weapons, the non-degradables, these are the alternatives. So the Armadyl crossbows, as I mentioned, 12.5 mil to buy the pair. They are dual wield, so you get a couple better abilities, I find. But if you don't want to show out that much, and I left this on there because so many people forget these exist, the level 70 Black Salamander is non-degradable, and it costs 8.5k. It's a dirt cheap weapon. It's not the best. You don't want to keep this long term, but if you're on a budget, this is what you get. And yeah, keep that in mind. Now I'm going to make some mentions to a few other items. So Hydrix jewelry, all Hydrix jewelry, they're around 25 mil each. I highly recommend do not get these. I mean, these might be decent for really top end bossing, but it's 3.3 mil like per a piece of jewelry, and that's crazy. So they last 11 hours, which is actually decent. There's also the level 90 power gloves, which are the Razorback for melee, Celestial for mage, and Ascension for ranged. I got Ascension the other day. It was really fun. They can't be repaired, and they cost 1 to 4 mil each, and they last 11 hours. So I only recommend these for bossing. Like a lot of these degradables are really good for bossing. Like an entire full set, you're only going to be wanting to kill Araxes with it, because nothing else is worth enough. But some of the lower degradables you do want to be using for like Slayer, because they speed up your kills and they make up the money back in how fast you're killing things. One more mention I will make is an item that I've been using, which is amazing. So I've been using the Blood Amulet of Fury, but you can get 4 different Blood Amulets. You can get the upgraded Dungeoneer ones, all 3 of them, and you can get the Blood Fury of Amulet. I'm going to keep that in there. Now, these are essentially, like, basically free. Like, these are free. Like, okay, not free in the money sense, but free in that there's no downside to these at all. So, with normal degradables, when they hit 0 charges, they're useless, right? With Blood Amulets, once they hit 0 charges, you can still use them for their stats. You can still use the Blood Amulet of Fury as a Amulet of Fury. Obviously, you can't trade these away because this locks them to your account, and you have. It's about 6 or 7 mil to upgrade these into their degradable counterparts. But once they hit 0, it's like there's still a Fury Amulet. They actually still have the effect, but the effect won't activate if you have no charges. They last 10 hours, and they cost 1 million to repair, from 0 to 4. And this can be influenced by your smithing, so you can bring this down to like 500k. So when they're degraded, the only thing they lose is their healing ability. Until you upgrade. So, I mean, what I'm planning on doing is, I mean, this is helping me so much in Slayer. I don't have to bring food to many things. I have more bag space. These are so good in terms of healing ability if you don't have Soul Split. Now, this video has been way longer than I originally wanted it to be. It took me this long to cover everything. I do apologise for this, but hopefully I will try and include links so you can get to the your best places, well, your intended place in the video. But as a summary, I'm going to say there are some really cheap repair costs there. I mean, even the more expensive ones, like Drygores, are actually still quite expensive to repair. If they're the only items you're using that are degradable, 2.5 mil isn't really too much, considering how much quicker you're going to be killing enemies and making money using them. They pay for themselves. So yeah, obviously degradables are always optional. If you're going for bossing, though, I highly recommend not using degradables. Well, not using non-degradables. You should be using degradables for bossing, and particularly for Argo and Araxi. But there are some in there which you can use for Slam, which are really cheap, such as the Royal Crossbow and the Blood Amulets. So yeah, I hope people found this useful. I'm always looking for suggestions for more videos, so if you've got any ideas, post them in the comments. So yeah, if you like this, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys later.